I actually have every single thing in the company stitched together in a Viktor dashboard that is entirely built and maintained by Viktor. So I see every 5 minutes exactly how our ARR is moving. What is the main lever behind that ARR? Did our ad spend yesterday cause a degradation in quality of signups? Down to that level, I see that entirely mapped in one unified place.
Hello and welcome to our marketing engineer session. Today we're talking about humans and agents working together as a team. How marketing and growth leaders can leverage AI with the right talent for hyper-efficient growth. I'm Scott Strand, growth lead at Knock, and joining me today is Matt Swulinski. Matt has spent the last year building one of the most advanced AI-powered growth systems in SaaS. After leveraging it to scale Wispr Flow as the first marketing hire, he recently joined Viktor as head of growth and to help build the next generation of AI native software. Briefly, Viktor is an AI employee who lives in Slack and Microsoft Teams, working alongside the rest of your team. They've already raised a $75 million Series A, the largest ever raised by a Polish-founded company. And now Matt is at the helm to scale their growth even further. So Matt, let's jump right in. After scaling growth at Wispr Flow, you've now joined Viktor, one of the fastest growing AI companies. You mentioned you've been collaborating with the Viktor team for a little while. In your own words, can you kind of explain what Viktor is and what drew you to it?
Yeah, of course. So I'll note one thing. I posted a challenge on this on X, but of companies founded this year, I'm curious if there's any other company that is growing faster than us, and I'm waiting for the consensus on that. But the quick TLDR on Viktor, I'll kind of like zoom out of like where Viktor came to be a little bit, because when I first got involved with Fred, our CEO, he reached out to me to help out with Jace. So Jace was and is the product is still live, a email assistant. So that agent harness, first lived in email. And I was helping advise scale that while I was at Wispr. And kind of from the ashes, there came an idea of what would happen if we took that agent harness, rebuilt part of it, and then threw it into Slack. And then Phoenix out of the ashes, then came Viktor. And it just so happened, complete like random happenstance, that these are also two League of Legends names. No correlation at all. But the persona, the personality it was the crucial thing, both in the email agent in Jace and also in Viktor. So Viktor today is a AI employee that you hire into Slack and Microsoft Teams that truly works alongside you, makes each individual more powerful. But the kind of secret sauce and the difference between all the other players is that because you hire in Viktor into your company, Viktor has that company-wide context. So it understands each unique department, each unique individual, what they each do, what they each work on. And that plus all the Slack context or Microsoft Team context and integration makes it like the perfect like employee that you always want to hire, very zealous, always proactive, like does extra credit work. That's like what Viktor feels like. So that's like the high level TLDR. We could definitely go deeper.
Curious, you're 1 month into the role at Viktor, is that right?
Yeah, full time. I started full time at the beginning of July. My announcement is like 2.5 weeks in, but yeah, I've been full time for a little bit over a month.
Cool. So I think a lot of people would be interested to hear. I'd be very interested to hear what has been some of your first action items while at Viktor. Like what have you already built in the first few weeks or, couple months you mentioned that you consider like the top growth priority?
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, like a lot of people, hear head of growth, and it's like, what does that function really mean? So I'm happy to kind of define what it means to the way that I think about the role, both of how it was at Wispr, but like even more so of like what it is for Viktor, where like growth to me is a function that's right at the intersection of marketing, product, and sales, right? And you can very often hear like when people say, "Hey, I work on growth," it could be sales, it could be product, it could be marketing. It's based kind of overlays on all of those things. And the mandate that I have, I work right alongside Fred, our CEO, is to essentially be that Swiss Army knife at the intersection of the entire business to find alpha, right? Where are the biggest places that there are opportunities? Whether that is in our onboarding funnel or activation steps, or is it, in marketing campaigns themselves, like anything within that. And, we recently also brought on Robbie, our CRO. So I work really closely with him, supporting the marketing headspace into what it means to spin up a big sales engine for us here. So to answer your question of like, what the last couple of weeks have been, and it's, I'd say it's finding those burning things in each of those lanes. But uh, for example, we are like we're kind of like we're pretending we're self-service, like a self-serve funnel. But the honest reality is that we're not, because you have to be, if you're a bigger Slack workspace, you have to be an admin in order to add an app to Slack. So, but if you're a smaller company, you can entirely self-serve, right? Like, and that's like what has been coming in so far. If it's Microsoft Teams, it's even worse. Like you have to be a what's called an org tenant, so like the super IT admin, to like add it into your Microsoft Teams instance, which means like the vast majority of people that we're targeting in our ads, because I've said this in other podcasts and other things that I've said, I approach SaaS just like I follow the core ecom playbook, right? So like even though we're a B2B SaaS, we are marketing with the standard meta model of Andromeda. Creative is the targeting. So we're obviously going to get people that are not admin. And right now we have a funnel drop-off point. So one of the biggest unlocks is moving to an email capture process. We're actually going to be shipping a web UI outside of Slack and Teams very soon. And that's going to allow us to essentially entirely uncap a funnel that is our biggest drop-off point, right? And so it was identifying that, coming up with not only a plan of what we can do on the front end, but there's product, there's engineering, there's whole things that need to change in order for that original idea to actually be resolved. So that's like one thing. Another is the like complexity of our channel mix. So like or Meta or Google or CTV, what's going in life cycle. How can we get those things to start working better together? And that really started with entirely overhauling our conversion tracking. So like Meta and Google are not optimized for businesses that are B2B SaaS, plus specifically not for usage-based businesses. So like we can get a sign up that is, let's say, a 3-person workspace, like a small company. That 3-person company can pay us $100 a month or $10,000 a month. And we have cases like this where to the algorithm, right, there's like some surface level things that we can say, of like, okay, enrich domain, how many people in the Slack workspace, assign score, and then like give some predicted value. But it's going to be wrong, because it's really hard to predict, is someone going to, catch that fire and find that big workflow? Cause like we have agencies that have 6 or 7 people that have stopped hiring, like they've been working with us for 5 months now, and they've stopped hiring, and they pay us 20, 30, $40,000 a month. And that was like a huge surprise to me. So we had to rethink everything when it comes to conversion tracking. And I work really closely with the executive team for CEE here in Meta, as well as Google, to essentially bring our use case into a redevelopment of how Meta even approaches companies like us. So we're working on alphas alongside with their teams to actually like change the way these algorithms work for companies like us.
Cool. And I suppose that's probably a little bit different than how you ran ads at Wispr Flow.
Yeah. So, I mean, at Wispr Flow, we definitely had the pleasure of, for a very long time, being able to like optimize for more upper funnel numbers, just the download. And we were able to, pump to a couple $1 million a month in ad spend, and still like everything else, the product experiments, the life cycle, the additive things from there worked to create quality from some unqualified people. And I would say just like the demand of things that were not paid. So the word of mouth, the amount of just like fervor that came of that, around with being an amazing product, made paid a lot easier because CAC was really low. That, a completely different challenge, but what we've worked in at Wispr now is actually the deep funnel event, and campaigns have since recently changed to that, where we're looking at like the first dictation after onboarding, or the first meeting that is recorded after someone onboards, and that's like very similar to what we defined as our most top of funnel event at Viktor, which is like it's our start trial event, but essentially it's sign up, you're able to edit Slack, you go through all of onboarding, and then you've gone through all of that, and then Viktor sends you a DM in your Slack workspace. That is our like first event that we optimize for. So like super down. But if we optimize for anything else above it, we just get absolute garbage.
Interesting. So your priorities are very focused on like figuring out that funnel, and like, even working with the product team to figure out like a better method for that funnel. so your paid is more effective. I'm curious, just kind of on the flip side, like obviously a lot of like the startup world, scale up world is, prioritization of where you spend your time and attention. I'm curious if there's anything like you eventually are thinking like, yes, we will for sure invest there, but you're not right now. Like right away, you're just like not even thinking about it, not spending any of your attention toward it.
Yeah, like right now for us, sales is very much a support vehicle for self-serve, right? So like the whole thing that we're not thinking about now is like ABM and like the B2B marketing side of just like feeding the sales engine, because that's just not where we are yet in our life cycle. Like we see so much upside and we've barely scratched the surface on self-serve. Like we will race really quickly to 100 million just on the back of that. And that's where all my focus is going, right? And that's like, you could say, okay, we need to do, we need to build up this motion. There are so many ICPs that we can take on. Same thing. Like we're picking one that we're focusing in on and like going really deep. So like, of course, the product will continue developing. We'll have our evergreen funnel. We're essentially picking one pocket of the world and seeing how growth, product, and sales can really work together to bring excellence into that one lane. Because like my hot take here is, and like I've gotten this question from a ton of people, and I'm happy to note it here, is like, a lot of people reached out to me and said, "Hey, like, is everything okay? Like, Claude Tag launched, like you guys like everything like big raise, like what's going on? Like, is everything gonna be okay?" And I'm like, I look at them and I smile, and I'm like, yeah, our numbers went up, right? Like we got market validation. Like, have you gone through the Anthropic Claude Tag funnel? You have to go and sign up for an enterprise or a team plan. It's not a thing that you see. You need to go deep into 4 layers of settings. Maybe you toggle it on. There's no UI. Like that is an awful experience, right? And then like the fact that like you can talk to it in Slack and people did research of what else was out there. We caught that wave immediately, right? And at the end of the day, like the player that will win in this space is not the one that comes first. It's not the one that like gobbles up some big enterprise accounts. It's the one that can take a specific ICP and intimately know it and build a product that feels personalized to them without pigeonholing themselves into a, Victor just for e-com brands or agencies or whatever else, right? Like we want that person to identify with us in the solutions that we provide them and know that we are the best solution for them without someone random going in and feeling this is just for media buyers or just for small businesses or just for enterprise, right? Like game and like the team that we've been like massing and bringing in is meant to essentially tackle that hands on. That's like how I think about prioritization, like a bit of our thinking on development and where we're headed.
Very cool. Very cool. Can I ask what like this agent assisted growth looks like when the product and company itself is like AI, like when you're selling an AI coworker? I imagine you're using Victor a lot already for like your work. Can you kind of discuss some of the top ways like an AI coworker helps you as a head of growth at a scale up?
Yeah, totally. Right. So, one of the easiest places to start, and a lot of people start with this with whether it's a Claude Code or whatever else, and it's the admin, the prioritization, the stuff that you just like don't want to waste time doing. And because Victor has all of the context, right, of my calendar, of my email, these are private integrations, no one else has access to them, but Victor can interface with me with those integrations. And then there are also team integrations, right? The ones that are shared by the whole team. So our linear is a team integration. It knows everyone's tasks, everyone's priorities, everyone's projects. Same thing with Hog and our feature roadmap and bugs and everything else. So when like one simple thing that I tell everyone to start with is if you don't have this set up, set it up. If you're using Victor, if you're using Wispr Note Taker, Granola, or whatever meeting recorder, at the end of your day, and it knows when your meeting's end, so you don't have to set a time. You just say after my last meeting, which none of the other solutions will actually let that won't work because they're always time based instead of like if then statement based. So after my last meeting, ingest all the transcripts, summarize what we discussed, what actions were taken, and remind me what things I said I would do. Ask me what I completed, and then make sure all of this is logged in linear or let's say, ClickUp or whatever your project management tool is. And then remind me the next morning, to block in my calendar when I need to do these things because otherwise they're not going to get done. And that's like a basic admin thing that is entirely now on autopilot. I don't need to think about the planning of my day. It knows what meetings I have. It'll flag and like, hey, you said this, like your morning's looking really packed. Like, here's a drafted message in your voice to this person, copy paste it, send it over to them. I did the heavy lifting for you, right? And this is like the extension of me in the thing that I don't need to like have the cognitive load to think about it. So that's like one basic example. But I'd say the biggest superpower, and this was a internal litmus test here at the company, where if you heard the marketing engineer podcast I did with Profound, very Cloud Code, Git control, the marketing OS. So I was like running all my work through Cloud Code. So the litmus test at Viktor was, is Matt going to become fully Viktor pilled, that I am no longer using Cloud Code and using Viktor fully for everything? And I'll give a TLDR that yes, that litmus test was passed. Viktor is the entirety of my kind of AI stack for Viktor itself because of all the context, right? Like, and this is like, if we're in a different system, it would not be connected. But I will say, for people that are devs or like interfacing with other tools like a Claude Code, a Codex, or a Grokbot, we launched a API which lets you connect your Viktor to any other agent, and that agent will use the API with all the connections that you have in Viktor, so you actually don't have to reconnect things. So that's a launch that we did this week. But where I was going with this is there's a lesser known public feature that I use very heavily at Viktor, and that's our Viktor Spaces functionality, which honestly, name pending, we will probably do something a little bit sexier than Viktor Spaces, the full launch. But this is something that's already live, but we're going to do a big launch moment on this. But Viktor Spaces are like, if like lovable Cloud Artifacts and like Cloudflare had a baby. So like at the end of the day, even though we have a data warehouse, we use ClickHouse, we also have Hex, we use BI for that. I actually have every single thing in the company stitched together in a Viktor dashboard that is entirely built and maintained by Viktor. So I see every 5 minutes exactly how our ARR is moving. What is the main lever behind that ARR? Did our ad spend yesterday cause a degradation in quality of signups? Down to that level, I see that entirely mapped in one unified place because Viktor has all the integrations. Viktor knows what everyone's working on. It is one like HQ cockpit center for everything that we're doing. That's like one use case. We have people that are using Viktor Spaces to build their own payment gateways and their own event registration systems and their own websites, like entirely end to end. So it's not only an assistant, it's a coding agent. It can spin up its own sandbox and host it, and it's fully secure if you don't want anyone else to access it. So like all these spaces, you have to log in through Viktor, through Slack. So there's that like double layer of security as well. So like a very, I'd say, easy feature that like, if I look at Wispr Flow or look at Viktor now, that's the biggest thing that I would say is the key behind our unlock is all the data, all the context, all the levers, all the information I need to pull some levers I have at my disposal. And if it's missing something, I go, hey, Viktor, in that page in the dash, can you add a log chart looking at the dispersion of workspace penetration and a correlation to paid? It was great, right on it. Throws it right in. And now I have that permanently always updated moving forward, and it just lives in its place.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Can we I would love to like talk about your time at Wispr Flow a little bit. I would love to see like how you got here essentially. You've talked about previously how you've transformed like one Git repo into the system that like your team used to scale Wispr Flow and like unlocked extreme efficiency without even knowing how to write code. Can you kind of walk me through the evolution of that system briefly?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it came to be through my personal workflow to be like I had to become agentic. Otherwise, I would have lost my mind, right? Like for a very long time at Whisper, I was an army of one. There was Dan, our CMO, and we had some other people in the periphery. Like I was not managing life cycle, but everything else, like I owned every KPI from eyeball to app download in end to end, right? So every ad, every experiment, every channel. So like the hundreds of newsletters, the every ad on Meta, all of our creative specs, everything. I was entirely overseeing alone. And it peaked at around like a $4 or $5 million ad spend per month. And the only way I was not losing my mind at that scale, because I had to build a system that like replaced some of the menial, the creative analysis, the moving of ads from testing to scaling. I right up until my transition, I was still alone running all of our Google ads just through the CLI. Like I could do everything through the CLI. So it was a force it was a force function, right? Where I had to essentially go and build this cloud system for me. And then come January of the beginning of this year, we started hiring a media buyer, an additional creative strategist, someone to take on influencer partnerships, the things that like needed to be handed off. And those people in the beginning were not using my system. So there was like, I would be giving them things like, oh, well, the copy's already done. Like here, like go and ship this, but like manage the relationship. And then I realized like, okay, this is a single player system. I have to be able to make this multiplayer. So no surprise in what I did. I said, hey, Cloud Code, this is our operating system. Now we need to make this multiplayer. Here's who the people are. Here's like, let's think through together how we need to do this. This, when plan mode was still a thing, let's plan mode. Let's talk about this as build a plan. And, like 36 hours of work of making it like, I'd say that v.5 was all I needed with Cloud Code to make this now like Git controlled marketing OS that is like there are personal folders of things that are like work in progress that no one this a PR doesn't need to be made, get maintained. And then all the stuff that is like context that's relevant. So like all of our contracts or like all the things that we're actually working and like what those dates are. So like one thing I learned quickly that was a failure point was skills or context files hard coding data, right? So then like there was like some latent context that was making like an investor deck, and it was just like 3 weeks old. And it was like 5 minutes to the meeting, and then like it was like building, and I was like, all right, I need this done. And then it was just like, oh God, everything is wrong. I learned very painfully by being a little late to that meeting that like one of those things that like it was just something that I had to think about, right? Like data gets stale almost immediately. Always have a time step of when it was updated. If it is not now, then run the query from Hex or our database to make sure that you are always using the latest snapshot. So these are like, it's also a self-improving where like I had to provide ongoing work to make this a system that worked. And the people that needed it most are, Meta Media Buy, our newsletter and influencer partnership specialists were the first people that were onboarded onto this to step into the workflow and create their own. So we have this whole creative engine that's like analyzing ICPs, spinning up briefs, doing deep analysis across everything that we're running across all channels. And like Eric, Raihan, and Sarthak on the Wispr team essentially use that to say make all decisions on media buying now. And like that wouldn't be possible if we didn't have that system. But it broke apart when there were less technical people, where like they immediately plug in. They didn't understand the folder system, the Git, the PRs, the what. Like it, like no matter how much like hands-on training and things that I did, there were just like some people that just couldn't get it. That's not what they were hired for. And like the breaking point here was like the systems thinking. But if someone can't think in these units of like, even though I'm not a non-eng, right? Like a .md file, a folder system, Git, like I learned these things because I had to, right? But I've always had an affinity for these things, but I'm not an engineer, right? But there are some people that this is a completely different side of their brain and it's not going to work. It's not going to fly. So that like the reality is the other half of the marketing team never adopted the system. So they were still like just kind of Claude questioning and like getting some data, but never like really compounding, like never getting to even a 5x position, not even talking about 10x, right? But that, like, that's all going on. And, I'm advising the Zeta team on Jace. Viktor comes out of the ashes, and, I see for the first time something that solves a lot of my problems that like individually, personally, even outside of anything that on that, advisor headspace is happening. And that's when I started really placing my bets that like, the next big leg of AI is multiplayer, right? And that's like that's where I'm hedging my bets, and that's why like I'm staying on as advisor at Wispr and what they're building. With the note taker launch, with voices in action, building Jarvis is an amazing vision, and I know they're going to be able to realize that. I think for the knowledge worker, the team, the problem is if we look at every adoption at the enterprise level all the way to the company level, if you think about true AI adoption, everyone has struggled to really see compounding gains with agentic loops and AI in general. And I think the players that are trying to solve this are going to be these kind of really next big $1 trillion companies that essentially work with the model providers to create this way of working alongside an AI employee. And that's like what Viktor's trying to accomplish.
In talking about the system, obviously, like you mentioned, you you grew it over time. You kind of went from like maybe not leveraging AI at a certain point, of course, to like really leveraging it, improving upon it. And then you built this amazing system with just like a lot of scale. As you're bringing it to Victor, and I know you said you've switched up the system a little bit, you're using Victor a lot for a lot of like your agentic growth tactics and scale. But I'm curious, are there any parts of the system that like didn't work as well as you expected, wasn't right, or like that you're intentionally leaving behind here as you kind of started this new company?
I definitely would say that like some of the workflows that I do related to like skill waterfalls and like a very systemic approach to like, I want this to happen. Thus, like I've built this like magnum opus of 16 skills that all talk to each other through a router and will do exactly what I want deterministically. Uh, in the beginning in early Victor, that was just like not how skills were set up, right? Like skills were one-offs for repeatable tasks, not a, hey, invoke this. Because like the way that I used Claude Code was very much like slash ICP campaign. And then I would do, let's say, disabled lawyers in Australia as like a super specialized, let's say, very niche ICP, which is one that we actually launched in service just based on Wispr Flow's capabilities around accessibility. But like what that would do is it would essentially do deep research by simulating that persona. So it would be a simulation framework. And then actually go through, what does this person read? How do they interact? Like, let me really get into the headspace here. And there are built-in checkpoints with the human in the loop where like I'm going to spend probably $100 of tokens going through this massive waterfall of skills. Let's make sure that I review things in the moments that matter to prevent drift or like or even the amount of turns and threads that I need to go in to course correct this. Knowing that everything later on is going to be more expensive, right? From a token optimization standpoint. And so was very intentional in how I built this ICP campaign skill that was like, I call it the Papa skill for a bunch of other stuff that's coming down. And like initially that was just not like how things worked. It's not how normal people use skills, right? And that's like, that was just something that like I showed this to Peter, our CTO, and he goes, great, it'll be live tomorrow. Like I didn't know people. It's like you're probably, and like that was like definitely probably the biggest smile I had in a while. But like when Peter, our CTO, was like, "You are the 1% of AI users. I hope you know." I'm like, wow, okay. I wouldn't have said that because I always feel like when you're doing these things, they feel like normal to you. But then like you show your workflows to other people, they look at you like you're a magician, right? And it's nice to get that validation. But that's like one thing, right? And I had a ton of these skills that I was using. So like it took a little bit of time to like build it in. But there were separate, right? Like separate context for Whisper, separate context for Victor. Like I had very clear air gaps where like this folded and like different Claude license, nothing touches anything else. So it's very intentional. I stress for people to do that because like a lot of people do the like I have a personal OS and a work OS and it uses the same license and it's a work license and it's like I would be careful with that. So like yeah, I mean that was definitely one thing. But I'd say that, and this is like because I also the biggest difference also of today of Victor versus Whisper is at Victor like right now we don't have a head of product. We will at some point. But I also am a core part of the product team. We have like a 6-person product team here that's mainly engineering, but I steer a lot of here's what we need to build. Here's like how we make this more for the advanced user. Here's how I was using these systems, and I steer a little bit more of the product roadmap. I had no say, right, in Whisper in any way, shape, or form. So this is like exciting to me being able to kind of steer a little bit of that narrative as well.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of have at Knock here, we're agentic customer engagement. We sell to people just like myself, like kind of the technical growth lead. And I found that super interesting because I am also involved in the recent project where we're shaping like our onboarding experience and like how people can sign up with agents, things like that. And it's like really cool to be a part of the product team like on those projects and like also give feedback on features that are related to growth and marketing teams. So that's a big rewarding part of my job as well.
Yeah, and I think because like it also collapses the need of like the feedback loop. Like there are not like 3 or 4 people involved. Like because you have a little bit more lateral headspace, you can take a acquisition growth idea and then have something that dovetails into a product onboarding idea that's then an activation idea, and you can actually see the whole motion through. And I've seen that be a huge jump in like the actual impact that things have.
Right. Right. And just the speed you get things done. Can I ask how many employees Victor has right now?
Yeah, we're just around 40 now.
Yeah.
So we've
Cool.
got like post Series A, we've had a big hiring push. We have like 3 to 5 people join essentially every week.
Cool.
A lot of that is on harness engineering and product engineering and that, and like my
Yep.
team on the growth side is also growing. But yeah, it's been wild to like see the team grow from 10 to 40 over the last couple months.
Yeah, that is pretty well. That's actually a good transition. I wanted to ask you, like, before I saw a post you had where you mentioned like this marketing OS agentic system has gotten like so efficient that you actually like took down open roles from Wispr Flow's careers page before. So I'm kind of wondering, like, are AI employees like Victor kind of an evolution to this, and has your hiring philosophy changed now that agents can perform like this very meaningful work and help you scale?
Yeah, I mean, so like the thing is like obviously the marketing team at Whisper existed before like the true agentic moment. So like there were things that would have changed if hindsight was 2020. But in general, like our hiring philosophy is hire the best in the world that is also AI native. Uh, because like if I only looked for like say the best media buyer that like spent the most amount of money, scaled the most companies, and is like that unicorn, but is not AI native, I bet that within 6 months, someone that is like top 10 plus agentic and like very curious and like is building systems will immensely outperform that person. So the hiring philosophy that we have is like there is no like pure thing that like Victor as an AI employee will entirely do, at least for us, because we know that like we want a human owner that is essentially just super powered, where like they're the board of directors of their department, and then all of the employees are really Victor, but like you still need the overseer, the brain, the strategy, because essentially if that was the case, like then everyone hiring Victor would potentially be able to outcompete us if that was true, and that's not true yet. We don't have Fable 10 that is smarter than all of us. But at the end of the day, uh, that's kind of like the root of the philosophy where like if I flip it around and I look at, I mentioned an agency, they're actually visiting our office on Monday. This example of like a 6-person team that spends a ton of money with us and they've stopped hiring entirely. And it's because they realized that like every single person would have had a ton more capacity to do what they're really good at if they got rid of like all of the reporting, the follow-ups, the like even drafting emails and like coming up with like pings that tell them if an ad is doing good or bad that like needs an action. So all the things that you had to context switch into, they went really deep into implementing Victor. So like all their analyst roles or their junior media buyers were just not needed anymore, and they remove those off the hiring roadmap. And that's like same thing that we're already doing as I was phasing out of my full-time role at Whisper, is bringing in way more senior people that are AI native that can round out a little bit more of the junior team that kind of like was there at Whisper. And at Victor, we're looking at, not obviously not just for seniority, but like experience in the space. And that person becomes the owner and it can essentially work alongside Victor and fully won't likely need a big team ever.
That's really interesting because I know you're hiring like for certain growth roles at Victor. I'm curious, and you're kind of mentioning this, but like, at what point do you then determine like, yes, we need one additional headcount versus just like deploying an agent to cover that? Because is it purely just scale, or like what has you hire 5 people versus 20 people?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely it's like hunting the alpha, like I mentioned earlier, where like if there's a huge gravity well that like is gonna be a big unlock for us, throwing an agent at it is kind of lazy, right? It's just kind of like it will upkeep only the scope and the setup that you've given the agent. It is not its own self-improving thing. Right. So like if I have it optimized meta ads and like it has a certain type of scope and like we want to try a completely drastic new strategy, it's not going to be the one that comes up with it. Right. So if there's something that is definitely burning for attention, and that's like kind of how my role is like I spin up the basic version of all the things that we should be doing, throw an agent at it, so a sub slice and a version of Victor. And then when it becomes big enough and there's a big enough opportunity, hire a person to work alongside that already existing workflow with Viktor to then make that Viktor and then 100 other Viktors around them make that next big thing and the biggest KPI driver for us.
Yeah, that's a great approach. Like just, keep it small while figuring out what works. And then when you need someone to really double down, essentially, that's like when you want a
Yeah,
great systems thinker to take
exactly.
action. Yeah, cool. Cool. All right. Before we leave today, I want to ask you, Matt, if you have any advice for, marketers, operators, builders, tinkerers that are like looking to level up the way they approach their work with AI and like leverage AI more to support their like current day-to-day tasks. Any advice on that?
Yeah, I get this question often, and like I'll say the thing I say often as well, but like the biggest unlock is to just be curious on how the thing works and ask it questions on how it can help you better, right? And like getting in the habit of pushing your work through any of the models at least gets like get into the habit and be okay with it being AI slop and being wrong. Like when you're a baby, you're also not doing things the right way. When you're a junior employee, you're not doing things the right way either. Treat the models the same way and give them the time and the attention to give them verbal feedback. Use Wispr, right? Like unblock your brain dump on what it did wrong. Don't go into the doc and fix it yourself. Or if you do that, paste it back and it said, I made all the changes, analyze why I did all the changes, create skills that are going to build this repeatable, persist this in memory so we don't do this again, right? Like doing that loop every day, all the time, going to make everyone a better user of AI. And then like start there and then you can build systems, right? Because sometimes people jump to the systems and they're just bad users of AI. So the system is not going to work if you're already not doing this improvement loop, right? Machine learning, reinforcement learning, it is that feedback loop, right? So work that same way, and I guarantee that the outcomes will surprise people if it give it the time and the attention.
Yeah, that's a great tip because that's like so easy to just be moving fast and not like feed it back in, but then it's going to have the same kind of output the next time and the next time and the next time. So especially for like repeatable tasks, feeding it back and giving it that feedback to learn.
Exactly.
It's a great tip. Yeah. Well, that's great. I've learned a ton today, and I'm sure I'll be learning more. I'm following you on LinkedIn, and as you kind of explore your new role with Viktor, I'm excited to see what else you learn. But Matt, thank you for so much for coming on and sharing your time with us today.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
And thanks for everyone for watching. Follow Knock on LinkedIn to catch the next Marketing Engineer session.